Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Chambers for the Supervisors for Calaveras County meeting. At this time, is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll adjourn to closed session. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Madam Clerk. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Item 1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. Second, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, one case, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4.
No public comment, so at this time we'll adjourn to closed session. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting for Calaveras County. At this time, Madam Clerk.
Report of closed session. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. There was no reportable action. Item 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, one case, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4. There was no reportable action.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Supervisor Garamendi, would you lead us, please? Thank you. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, do we have any announcements by Board of Supervisors or staff?
This is a time for board members and county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public. Mr. Chair, I have an announcement.
Madam Clerk.
Tomorrow will be the 2017 Calaveras County Senior Volunteer of the Year Award Luncheon from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Dodosa Ranch in Burson. If you would like to attend, it's a $10 fee for the lunch, and you need to call 209-498-2246. Additionally, on our regular agenda today, items 20 and 21 will be flipped, so we will hear item 21 before we hear item 20.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Any board announcements by the members of the board?
Yeah, I just wanted to, thank a lot of people. Excuse me. Sorry, Susan. I wanted to thank, there's a lot of people. There was a very risky situation in West Point yesterday with a fire that broke out, and I really wanted to extend my gratitude to those that responded quickly. We averted a real disaster as we look at the fires that are burning on the over on the coast, up in Sonoma and Napa and Butte and Yuba County. But really, I want to give kudos out to the Sheriff's Department. Did a great job in responding and getting people out of their homes in the middle of the night. Central Fire, Cal Fire, Moke Hill, West Point, San Andreas Fire, Red Cross, Behavioral Health, Animal Services all showed up and really did a great job. And I think they've been practicing, and I think it shows, and I hope that we have a good debrief after this too, because there was good things and there's always things to learn. And as we watch these fires burn, we remember the Butte Fire and the risks that we face every day. So I just wanted to give the kudos to the county staff as well as the volunteers and our local firefighters who really did a great job and averted a very dangerous situation yesterday. I also want to make a quick announcement that Mountain Ranch Central Fire has wood elves. So if you know senior citizens who need wood for this winter for heating purposes, we're finding a way to engage volunteers and chop wood. As everybody here knows, we've got a lot of wood up that's dead and dried and seasoned, ready for use. And so get in touch with Central Fire, stop by our fire station, and connect, especially our seniors and those who are going to need help staying warm this winter. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Garamendi. Further comments? I have a couple of comments. I'd like to take a quick moment here as the Board of Supervisors meeting to recognize the loss of life and the injuries that occurred in Las Vegas last weekend. It was just a disaster that happened. I think that they handled that the best way they possibly could, although the investigations are still continuing. We still don't know all the facts, but I think I can speak for the Board of Supervisors and probably for most of the people here in Calaveras County that we stand with those folks, those families that have lost loved ones, those folks that are injured, and what we have to expect to come before us in the future. I also want to extend our help any way we possibly can to the victims of our current fires going on right now in our adjoining counties and our counties over on the coast. We've been through that. They are going through the same, if not more severely worse situations. Those are things that we got to be aware of. It's not a question of when, it's a question of how many times. So I would appreciate everybody joining me in saying that we stand with those people and those counties too. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Recognition and acknowledgements. Item 3, receive a presentation from participants in the local 4-H program.
Okay. Hi, I'm Cleo. I'm 16 years old. I'm with West Point 4-H. I am the secretary of my club, and I am the vice president of 4-H Council. And my favorite thing in 4-H is being able to just help people out, no matter like what age. Like when we put on petting zoos and stuff, we help anybody from little guys all the way to full-grown adults. So that's fun.
My name is Annabelle. I am 10 years old and I am with West Point 4-H. I signed up for the chicken, where we work with chickens, and then I went to Lumberjack Days. As a true 4-H'er, I pledge my head to clear thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to larger service, and my health for better living, for my club, my community, my country, and my world.
We'd like to thank you guys for all your support, and we have some gifts of mugs and some homemade crochet.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for coming up here as a 4-H alum and a parent of 4-H'ers. It's a great program, and you guys do great things.
Okay. Madam Clerk? Wait,
Public comment?
I'm sorry.
Is there any public comment?
Oh, public comment. I'm sorry, folks. Don't leave so quick. Is there any public comment regarding the 4-H presentation?
I believe in youth programs like the 4-H, and I'm a result of the 4-H. I won the county dairy award. There were a whole 2 dairy cows in the whole county, but, you know, it was a good feeling. I sewed a button to myself when I was supposed to be sewing it onto something else in one of the demonstrations, and I nearly died. And everyone else had a really good time laughing. And I just think it's a great program.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Janice Bassett from Valley Springs, and I'm very happy to see the 4-H here, and I want to again extend an invitation to them to come and use the Valley Springs Youth Center as a venue and a resource. We have sewing machines, we have fabric, we have thread, we have computers, we have drones, we have all sorts of programs that maybe the 4-H would like to make use of the Valley Springs Youth Center for their projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, broadcast this in Valley Springs. They got drones? Wow. I'm glad they spoke from the 4-H this morning because I've been doing a lot of reading on Prop 64 and how it's evolved into Senate Bill 94. And whereas previously I'd been focusing on the 20% of tax money that would be devoted to eradication.
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
I'm coming there.
All right, this is not the general public speaking. This is
I know that.
All right, this is for dealing with 4-H.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, all right.
Whereas I've been dealing with the 20%, I find that the bigger portion is the 60% of tax monies that will go towards youth programs. Now, a lot of that is outreach, speaking to people saying don't do drugs at a young age. But a lot of it, as I read it, is very flexible. It can be used for things like building a skateboard park in a town where kids are kind of bored and likely to get into trouble if they don't have good things to do, like organize things. I would think a group like 4-H could benefit. I'm just seeking to say that let's try and find a way that we can still tap into that 60%, many millions of money that could go towards youth in our county who really don't have a lot of options. I see the skateboarders down in the Vista del Lago Shopping Center. Give them a park. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment on the 4-H presentation? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Item 4 is from the Board of Supervisors to adopt a proclamation honoring Corporal Tom Oldham for his 14 years of service to the residents of Calaveras County as a deputy with the Sheriff's Office and congratulating him on his retirement.
I see the Sheriff's Department's here. Sheriff, Lieutenant, Captain, how are you? Lieutenants, Sergeant, and Corporal.
We brought everybody. I've already had a text message that the whole county's back here in the back room. They want to know where everybody else is at. Everybody's working the
Yeah,
streets.
who's on the street?
Who's on the streets. Tom Oldham's been with the department for 14 years, as you said. He's been a great asset to the community. We have a concerned citizens in the Arnold area right now that are concerned who our next resident deputy is going to be. Rest assured that we have another resident deputy already picked out, and they have some big shoes to fill in Tom. So, Thomas, front and center.
Corporal.
Here.
You can stand right there. You have a gun. You can stand in the way. From the Board of Supervisors of Calaveras County, State of California, proclamation recognizing Tom Oldham 14 years of service as a member of the Calaveras County Sheriff's Department. Whereas, Tom is a retired career Marine serving all over the world in a variety of assignments, including embassy duty, combat duty, administrative duty, recruiting, and a variety of other assignments. And whereas, Tom retired as a Master Sergeant, one of the highest enlisted ranks in the Marine Corps. And whereas, Tom began a second career as an extra hire sheriff's recruit on December 13th of 2003 and became a permanent employee of the department as a sheriff's deputy on September 25th, 2004. And whereas his law enforcement career includes patrol, court security officer in charge, field training officer,
investigative detective, along with other special duty assignments. And whereas, on February 17, 2007, Tom was promoted to senior deputy, and subsequently, the position was then reclassified to corporal on July 9, 2016. And whereas, Tom has earned a second retirement with a retired rank status of corporal effective October of 2017. And whereas, during his off-duty time, Tom enjoys projects around the house and spending time outdoors hiking, camping, snowshoeing, and boating. And whereas, even though he will be retired, Tom will have to learn how to actually relax. Could I have a motion, please, on this proclamation and public comment after the motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Supervisor Mills, second by Supervisor Tofinelli. Before the vote, we'll entertain public comment. You can turn around, Corporal, and face him in the eyes.
Hi, I'm Kelly Coyne. I'm the director of the Calaveras Crisis Center, and I just want to voice my appreciation to Tom. He was the domestic violence investigator for a while and worked closely with our office. Everybody in my office has a great deal of respect for him. He has a lot of compassion for victims. He did really well with really sensitive situations, and more than anything, we're going to miss his hugs. So good luck.
Normally you would be, but not today. Good morning, Barbara Uke, District Attorney. I wanted to echo Kelly's sentiments. My whole office is going to miss working with you. Tom consistently displayed a level of professionalism and thoroughness and just all around good guy attitude in dealing with us over the years. I didn't hear that one of your activities was going to be writing. I would encourage you to maybe write a book or something. What you might not realize about Tom is that his reports weren't simply, I was on patrol, saw a guy arrested, same. He always put in some flavor, and we kind of had a joke in my office that if it was an Oldham report, it would start off, "It was a dark and stormy night," is how things would go. So his reports wouldn't be Tom Oldham, they'd be Tom Clancy. We are definitely going to miss that, and good luck to you in your future. Thanks, Tom.
Sheriff?
I had one more thing I wanted to add, something that, that they talked about how great a guy Tom was. Most of them hey, once he's retired, he's done. The one thing that a lot of people don't know about Tom is most of you who've been around the county for a long time remember Albert, our local gentleman, used to live here in San Andreas. And Tom and his wife extended their hospitality to him in more ways than you can imagine, and actually went above and beyond to help somebody who needed that extra help. So congratulations to Tom for doing that.
I needed a training buddy.
There you go. And he was the perfect one for that.
Good morning, George Fry. I went to the Lumberjack Days several years ago, and I misplaced my cell phone. And this gentleman found my cell phone, and he realized that I had Sheriff Kuntz's name and phone number in there, and that was how he was able to locate me.
Yeah.
Tom, Sandy, my Trot Mountain Ranch. You and I have never officially met, but we have crossed paths. I just wanted to say, as the daughter of 2 Marine Corps Staff Sergeants, Semper Fi, and thank you so much for your service.
You're not done, sir. You are not done. What's his date of retirement, Sergeant? Sheriff?
It's actually the 15th, but he's going to work another day. He's going to work an overtime day on Saturday. We wouldn't let him leave that easily.
Are you going to
On
TP
OT?
his, are you going to TP his car?
No, because we'll have to clean it off.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a vote, we have a motion before the Board of Supervisors regarding the proclamation. At this time, I'll call for a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed indicate by saying no. Motion passes 5-0, unanimous. Thank you very much. We have one more.
Down. Hang on.
We have one more. From the California State Legislation, certificate of recognition presented to Corporal Thomas Holden, United States Marine Corps and Calaveras County Sheriff's Office. Congratulations on your retirement over 23 years with the United States Marine Corps and 13 years with the Calaveras County Sheriff's Office, providing military and civilian protection for your friends, fellow citizens in a noble calling, and your service is honored and appreciated. Presented October 15th, a couple of days before, in San Andreas, California, almost. Signed Assemblyman Frank Bigelow, Senator Tom Berryhill. I'll be presenting both certificates now. Staff, you can come up there after the photo ops. My friend, Tom and I have been through a lot together. Some good, some bad. But you made an indelible mark on my son.
You were my trainee.
I was.
So we blame him.
You got to deal with that wall, Mike.
Now I can have Public Works go out and do that.
Yeah, now we know his fault.
Thank you for your service. Thanks for being my friend.
Two Marines.
Okay, this time smile. Okay, that's the smile, all right.
You're experiencing this pretty quick. There are 3 days in my life that I dreaded. The day I was completing my tour of duty in the Marine Corps. The day I retired as the Oakland police officer. And the day I was not allowed to maintain a deputy status on the Calaveras County Sheriff's Office because I got elected supervisor. Those were tough days. You'll get through this. We'll see in 15.
I'll be fine.
Madam Clerk.
Item 5 is from the District Attorney's Office to adopt a proclamation recognizing October 2017 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Good morning, Barbara Uke, District Attorney. I'm also here with Kelly Cohen, from the Crisis Center. Thank you for helping us bring awareness to the issue of domestic violence. Nationally, Domestic Violence Awareness Month is October. We all know that domestic violence occurs, but we don't often hear all of the details up close and personal because most of the times it happens behind closed doors. Sadly, domestic violence continues to occur in Calaveras County, including some very serious incidents of domestic violence. Just this last summer, my office completed a week-long jury trial. It was a domestic violence case and also some child molestation involved in the case. And the victim in that case suffered getting her tooth knocked out, being choked, being battered, and we were successful in that jury trial, and the perpetrator is now in prison for 66 years and 8 months to life due to the nature of all of the offenses. So it does happen here. It happens all the time, and this is very important, and I appreciate your willingness to support us and bring awareness and hope to victims of domestic violence. We do have an event coming up. It is the grand opening of our new Victim Services Center, which I want to extend my appreciation to all of you in supporting us being able to get our victim services staff out of our trailer. If any of you have been to my office and have been to the lobby, you kind of understand what I'm talking about. Think back to when you're just waiting there for a few minutes after you've walked in the door, and imagine if you were a victim of domestic violence, standing there in our tiny little cramped lobby and having no place, no private place to speak with a victim's advocate. So this is very important. This is a huge deal for us and a huge deal for victims in our county to have a place to go. So I do have invitations for each of you, and I think I got them all in the right order. So if I can give these to Diane, and you can take the top one and pass it down. I think I got them right. Okay, so the grand opening and domestic violence awareness event will be October 25th. It's open to the public. I hope you will join us, and I hope certainly all of you will join us, because you were very instrumental in helping us get the Victim Services Center open. We will be there from 12 to 3 with a ribbon cutting at 12:30, and then open house. Right now, I'd like to introduce Kelly Coain. She has some very specific remarks about, you want to be next, right? About what the Crisis Center does, and I think you have some numbers? Yes. Yeah, usually the board members like to hear numbers about what's happening in their own districts. So I'll turn it over to Kelly.
Good morning. Letitia's going to pass out some pins for you, and they're attached to a flyer that, I apologize, it's a little disturbing, but you know, domestic violence isn't a happy topic. We talk a lot about domestic violence and how it affects adults. People have a really hard time understanding why people stay in domestic violence relationships, and there's a ton of different reasons that happens. It could be economic, it could have to do with someone's lack of self-esteem. It can be that they grew up in a situation like that and it feels normal. But the biggest impact that we see is on children. The flyer that I passed out talks about some nationwide statistics on how domestic violence affects children. I think that many times adults feel like they can hide this kind of situation in their home from a child by, you know, making sure that they only fight when they're asleep, or they have them go outside. And you know, kids, they just know stuff. They're really, really smart. And so we always want to talk to people about how the situation in the home is affecting the children. There's a statistic in the middle of this flyer that was particularly disturbing to me, and it's that 15 million children in the United States experience childhood domestic violence. A child that grows up in a home where there's domestic violence has a hard time learning, has self-esteem issues, many times has depression and anxiety, many times feels like the situation is their fault. We've had a lot of children in our center where we really worked on trying to help them understand that the reason mommy and daddy aren't getting along has nothing to do with them. And they take that into adulthood. A lot of times when we see perpetrators of domestic violence and we look back at their past, we can see that they had domestic violence in the home. So they learned that that was a normal way of solving problems. Or on the other hand, they became a victim of domestic violence in their adult years because, again, that seemed normal to them. I think that the DA would agree with me that a lot of perpetrators, maybe not of domestic violence, but of other types of assault or types of drug-related crimes, also often have a history of domestic violence in their homes when they were children. So addressing this consistently on a community level, you know, making sure that we're talking about it, making sure that we're not looking away when we see something happening out in public, that we you know, support the local DV center, that we support the law enforcement, and we support the DA's office as they're prosecuting these crimes, that we don't put it back on the victim and say, well, why didn't you just leave? Why this? Why that? You know, it's about the community saying this is not acceptable. And if for no other reason, it's not acceptable because it harms our kids and it harms the next generation of the people that are going to be running this county. I do have some statistics. For the calendar year of 2016, the Calaveras Crisis Center served 442 victims of domestic violence. Now, that seems like a pretty big number, but when you look at the fact that 60% of people who experience domestic violence never report it, it gives you kind of an idea of what might be going on. There were 207 responses to a domestic violence situation by the Sheriff's Department in that same period of time, and 10 for the Angels Camp Police Department. We sheltered 43 victims of domestic violence, 22 adult females, 1 adult male, and 20 children. And again, we have quite a few children that are going through counseling for domestic violence. So in a 12-month period, we had 109 kids, not necessarily in our shelter, but that came and got some type of services related to domestic violence, whether it was their parents brought them in or a school referred them. We now have domestic violence counselors in both high schools, which is a really good thing. We're seeing a really big increase in teen dating violence. I don't know that they're reporting it at the level of a crime, but we had 121 teenagers in the last 12 months that reported that they were in some type of abusive situation with regard to dating. So it's disturbing. Something that we have to keep talking about, unfortunately, and I really hope that someday I'll come up here in October and say, guess what? We didn't have any domestic violence in the last year. That would be a big celebration. We also are doing an event for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and it is an open house and kind of a celebration of 1 year of services for our Children's Counseling and Advocacy Center. So this is a place we started about a year ago through some grant funding. It's specifically for children. We only serve children there, child victims of crime. It doesn't have to be just domestic violence, it's any crime. They get free services, free licensed therapy for as long as they need it. We use a therapy dog in the process, which has been really good for the kids. Kids that don't often want to open up love talking to Molly. So on the 20th of October from 3 to 6, we will be having an open house. We would love to see you there. You can come and see what we do, meet the dog, meet our therapists and our advocate.
Thank you.
I know that Kathy is chomping at the bit to come up and talk, so I'm going to let her have her turn now.
Question, Supervisor Garamendi? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt your presentation. I want it to be done. Sorry.
Good morning, Kathy Howell, Program Coordinator for Victim Services. First of all, I want to say good morning. And thank you for allowing us the opportunity to move into our new home. We've really seen a change just in the victims that have come in. We like to call them survivors. We've seen a comfort level and a safe place for them to come in and be able to open up about the things that are going on in their life. You know, this is something that, again, is domestic violence is a unspoken disease, I like to call it. It's something that people don't want to talk about. If we are able, as humans, and not only as a victim advocate, we have a moral obligation to this community to keep people safe. In doing that, it's acknowledging, recognizing, and reporting domestic violence when we see it. So I appreciate you guys. Purple is the color we wear for domestic violence awareness, and thank you.
Thank you.
I have the pleasure of reading. Are you going to speak?
I just want to say that it's been a pleasure working up until this point. I started in May, and I have seen such great things coming out of our DA's office in the Crisis Center. It's been such an honor to be here and to really bring new things to this county. I can't wait for you all to see our beautiful little place that we call our office and sometimes a home, but our victims have really had a nice time being able to talk and to feel safe and to have an area where they can relax and they don't feel like they're going to feel vulnerable. So it's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I have the pleasure of reading the declaration. Board of Supervisors, Calaveras County, State of California, proclamation declaring October 2017 Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas domestic violence touches the lives of Americans of all ages, leaving a devastating impact on women, men, and children of every background and circumstance. And whereas children who live in homes where there is domestic violence also suffer abuse or neglect at high rates and are more likely to be in abusive relationships in adulthood. And whereas domestic violence is not only physical violence, emotional abuse can leave victims with scars as well. And whereas domestic violence calls for some of the most dangerous for law enforcement to respond to and the most difficult to prosecute. Whereas the District Attorney's Office, Victim Services, the Resource Connection, Calaveras Crisis Center, and law enforcement work closely together to help effectively respond to domestic violence victims. And whereas the Resource Connection, Calaveras Crisis Center sheltered 43 men, women, and children and provided assistance to 347 domestic violence restraining orders in the past 12 months. And whereas the Calaveras County District Attorney's Victim Service Program provides comprehensive services to domestic violence crime victims and witnesses in Calaveras County, including education about the court process, assistance in obtaining restitution and compensation for crime-related expenses, and referrals to private and public providers. And whereas providing this level of service and support helps prevent domestic violence victims and witnesses from feeling delusioned and re-victimized by criminal justice system. And whereas a culture that turns a blind eye to this type of abuse will inadvertently perpetrate it. Therefore, I guess we need a vote at this point, huh?
At this point, we'll entertain public comment. Seeing none, Supervisor Garamendi, did you have a question? No. Oh, okay, public comment? Ms. Stevens, morning.
Good morning, Nikki Stevens. On behalf of Mark Twain Medical Center, we would really like to take just a few moments and recognize and acknowledge the hard work that goes into the presentation that was just before you. I know that these ladies behind me represent a movement. And I have to say, personally and professionally, it's not just about the information that they brought before you, but is truly, I believe, a calling that they have as individuals as well. And as a citizen of Calaveras County, I'm very proud of the work that they do, and we partner Mark Twain Medical Center with them periodically on numerous things for outreach, and we are very grateful for the work that they're doing. So I just wanted to acknowledge them publicly for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fry?
Good morning, George Fry. When I worked as a parole agent, I was accused of being the social worker in the office amongst 12 parole agents. And I like the fact that they use a dog. I had a puppet that I used, and my supervising parole agent used to, he didn't like me using it. And my puppet was Jerome the giraffe. And I was able to get a lot of parolees to talk to Jerome and get information that helped improve their lives. And so I'm very happy to hear that they're using puppets. Thank you.
You're welcome. Further public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Now, Supervisor Garamendi, do you have a question? No. Okay. At this time, I would entertain a motion.
I would move this item, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Tofinelli. A second. Second by Supervisor Garamendi. Already had public comment. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion passes 5-0, unanimous.
Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors that the month of October 2017 is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Be it further proclaimed that the board encourages all citizens to honor the important work done by domestic violence programs, the Calaveras Crisis Center, local law enforcement, and the District Attorney's Office Victim Services, and urge citizens actively to support and participate in programs to eliminate the use of personal and institutional violence against women and men, and I'm going to add, and children. This passed passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors, the County of Calaveras, State of California, this 10th day of October 2017. Can I get all four of you up here?
Giant mess here. Squish it. There you go.
Ready? You guys will smile, right? Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Item 6 is from the Board of Supervisors to proclaim the week of October 15th through 21st, 2017 as Freedom from Workplace Bullies Week in Calaveras County.
I have a malfunction right now.
Yeah,
Proclamation recognizing October 15th through 21st of 2017. That's Freedom from Workplace Bullying Week in Calaveras County. Whereas the County of Calaveras County has an interest in promoting the social and economic well-being of its citizens, employees, employers, and whereas that well-being depends upon the existence of healthy and productive employees work in a safe and abusive-free work environment. And whereas research has documented the stress-related health concerns in individuals caused by exposure to abusive work environment. And whereas abusive work environment are costly for employers, with consequences including reduced productivity, absentees, turnovers, and injuries. And whereas protection from abusive work environment should apply to every worker and not be limited to legal protected classes, status based on race, color, gender, national origin, age, or disability.
is there any public comment? Ms. Hawkins, good morning.
Judy Hawkins, Human Resources Director. Last year, I had brought before the board a new equity policy. Within that policy, we also had a section that covered bullying. And I think one of the things that we forget that's covered in bullying, we know about verbal bullying, physical bullying, gesture bullying, but we forget about exclusions. And that's where we will take our friends to lunch and leave one person out all the time. Or we will say good morning to everybody but one person. We will offer the cupcakes we made last night to everyone but one person. And this is bullying. And these are the type of complaints that come to HR. And we forget about how hard it is on the person. The mental stress that it puts on someone to be left out. There is an 80% loss of productivity when somebody feels harassed or bullied. And it also, whereas we have workers' comp complaints, we have people that has to seek medical treatment because they feel bullied by coworkers, by managers, and so that's something that we need to be aware of as fellow workers, as managers, supervisors, that we have to be aware how we're talking to people, how we're treating those around us. It is in our personnel ordinance 2.64 to treat one another with respect. And that doesn't seem like it would be very difficult, but sometimes some of us, it's almost an impossible feat. We need to just say good morning, good afternoon, and when we're passing on assignments, work duties or talking to somebody about how they're doing their work, we need to be respectful of one another.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Good morning, Bonnie.
Good morning. I was thinking about bullying. I've been bullied, and I've been a bully. To me, it's a misuse of power, authority, or strength in an effort to control or silence others. Bullies usually act out of some kind of psychological problem, or maybe it's a cultural training or expectation. Bully always has to get the last word. They negate anybody else's opinion. They're always right, and you're always wrong. We can hear them say, "I'm not going to debate this any further." I've heard that before. We can hear it's an excuse. "Oh, I just have an alpha personality." There's a big difference between aggressive and being assertive. I think we know the difference. We know who the bullies are. So I got my dictionary again, and I looked up bullying. It's hurting, frightening, or tyrannizing others who may be smaller or weaker. It's browbeating also. In the home, it can lead to domestic violence. We just heard a whole lot about domestic violence and all the levels. In the schoolyard, it can lead to some social and learning problems that may affect children the rest of their lives. In the workplace, it can lead to poor work performance and poor productivity, mistrust, dysfunctional work environment, and maybe lawsuits. But finally, on the world stage, bullying, we're becoming more aware, can lead to World War III. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the Board of Supervisors. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't see your light.
I'll
Supervisor.
make a quick comment and then
Okay.
I'll make a motion. I think it's important that we as a Board of Supervisors recognize that we are also subject to the personnel policy that is put forward by Human Resources, and we need to be aware of how we interact with staff as well, and not bullying. And there is a difference between being aggressive and being assertive and being a bully. And we just need to remember that what we do up here matters to people who share our workplace environment with us as well. So unless there's no other further comments, I would like to make a motion to adopt this.
Have a motion by Supervisor Garamendi,
I'll second that.
second by Supervisor Clapp. No further public comment. Bring it back to the board for call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0, unanimous.
Therefore, be it proclaimed that Calaveras County Board of Supervisors proclaim October 15th through 21st, 2017 as Freedom from Workplace Bullies Week in Calaveras County.
Okay. Is there anyone to accept the certificate?
I believe that Marty Crane was going to be here to accept the proclamation on behalf of the gentleman who brought this to the board's attention at the last meeting. However, since she is absent, my guess is that she is... Yes, me too. Oh, okay.
Ms. Titchell?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah, that's right, she's volunteering, I understand. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get into our public speaking,
We got one
I'm
more.
sorry, one more. I'm sorry. Supervisor, I'm sorry. Madam Clerk.
Item 7 is from the Board of Supervisors to proclaim the month of October 2017
Thank you. This is a proclamation that should be important to everybody who has a mother, a sister, a brother, a father. This impacts everybody's family. And this is a proclamation recognizing the month as October 2017 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in Calaveras County. Whereas breast cancer is the second most commonly diagnosed cancer in women, and whereas approximately 1 in 8 women born today in the United States will develop breast cancer at some point in their lifetime, and whereas education, early detection, and treatment allow most women to live long and healthy lives, and whereas although breast cancer in men is rare, an estimated 2,470 men will be diagnosed with breast cancer each year, and whereas women between the ages of 40 to 49 should talk to their doctors about when to start getting mammograms, and whereas over 3.3 million breast cancer survivors are alive today in the United States, and whereas more information is known today than there was 5 years ago, and much more information will be available 5 years from now.
Any public comment?
See if I can do this without crying. I feel Diane's pain, and this is extremely important. My sister, I lost her to breast cancer. It is classified as inflammatory breast cancer. Generally, there is no genetic link to family members, so it is extremely important that people remain aware, conscious, know their bodies, get their mammograms, and talk openly about this disease with their doctors. So thank you for taking the time for recognizing it.
Thank you.
Vicki Reinke, Angels Camp. I just wanted to make a comment too that it doesn't just hit older women, it hits the young women too. My good friend's niece died of breast cancer after she had a baby, and so she left a little 2-year-old. And just a month ago, my sister's daughter-in-law passed away from breast cancer after having a little 5-year-old. So it doesn't just hit the older women, but also the young too. So it's definitely something we need to be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Winkie.
Good morning. I'm feeling a little emotional this morning, which is something that I think we need more of in our community, quite frankly, because it represents that we're humans and that we need to be transparent with one another. And on this topic of breast cancer, I am here, obviously, representing Mark Twain Medical Center. And October is a very important month on many levels, as you've all been so gracious in your declarations this morning in recognizing these special initiatives that we need to pay attention to. But breast cancer, especially as you're hearing from your public today and those who can't be here, has affected everybody in some way, shape, or form. And I'm looking at all of you right now, and I'm sure your wheels are turning about people that you love, that you hope never have to experience what you've heard the testimony of about. I brought some gifts for you, and I say that in the kindest way that I possibly can, because we need everybody in our country to be very aware that cancer is still the second leading cause of death today, second only to heart disease. And us women, we have to stick together in our sisterhood, and we have to be supportive of one another. And we need you men to also remind the women in your lives that early detection is very important about breast cancer, especially for men as well. So what I brought to you today is on behalf of Mark Twain Medical Center, but I brought you something that's a little symbolic for somebody who's not bearing the responsibility that you supervisors do, but bears a responsibility of keeping you all on point and keeping you all informed, and I think that's Diane. And Diane, I brought the gifts in a bag, and you know, we all hear the cliche, if you will, about baggage. This bag is for you to get rid of any baggage that you have, and know that this bag, if it could represent love and kindness in every way, shape, and form from everybody in this room and beyond, we would overflow and fill up this room with bags. So That's my corny spiel, but it's heartfelt. It wasn't planned, but the bag was planned and the thought was planned. And I also want to remind you all that tonight is Mammoglam, and it's the first time that we as a hospital have provided mammograms in the evening. So we're doing that tonight from 5 to 7 and again on the 26th from 5 to 7. And you don't have to come and get a mammogram. You can come and be goofy with us girls and celebrate sisterhood. It's about love, everybody, quite frankly, because cancer is something that affects everybody. And if you don't have a good spiritual feeling about yourself, and if you don't have support and love, you're more susceptible to any kind of cancer. And personally, for me, it's something I live with too. It's not a big secret, but my daughter, who's not my biological daughter, but she's my daughter, her mom died October 5th of 2004. She lost her battle to breast cancer. And so in our family, it's something that we try to move forward about, but we feel that it's our responsibility and our diligence to promote the awareness even more so. So thank you for hearing me out today. Thank you on behalf of Mark Twain Medical Center. And may I approach Miss Diane? Okay. So what you have is a light bulb, because we hope that you take these home and put them in your porch lights, quite frankly. And you have a pin, and there's some gifts that you can share with the women in your life, or you can keep for yourselves.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thanks, Nikki. Thank you, Nikki.
Broadcast this Valley Springs. I guess I'll speak to the guys just from personal experience. Almost exactly a year ago, I woke up with my left breast noticeably swollen and really tender to the touch. And I thought, wow, am I that small percentage of guys who have breast cancer? And I went through University of California. Luckily, I have Medicare. My total cost was $330 out of my pocket. But it was a one-day thing. I went through 1, 2, 3, 4 different departments. In the fourth, she was, putting needles in and extracting cells. And within just a few days, I had a diagnosis that I did not have breast cancer. So I just want to make it clear, if you think you might, it's pretty darn quick and not all that expensive to find out. And I'll tell you, it was a real relief off my mind because I just thought I had it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, Stacy
Morning,
Johnston, San Andreas. Good morning. As a resident, as a woman, I lost my grandma to breast cancer. She was in her 50s, very young. But it was something you didn't talk about. I was little. Families didn't talk about issues and disease and ailments like we do today. I found my first lump when I was 15, all the while in my mind thinking, knowing what my grandma went through. So this is a part of my life, every year, there for a while, every 6 months, mammograms, biopsies, you name it, I've had it. And so what an inspiration you are to be sitting here in your pink, and what you represent, Diane. We are in a time of awareness, and we post anything and everything on social media. I don't care what it is. People air their dirty laundry about anything and everything. It's the day and age we live in. So what a great opportunity to make our public aware, to make our community aware of things that are life-changing, they're life-altering, not just for this generation, for so many to come. Again, it starts very early. It's not just for a woman in her 50s or older ages. It starts very early. It's not just a woman's disease anymore. Again, I commend the efforts of our public health, of the hospital, of our community to get the word out. We have great resources here in Calaveras County. I've utilized them many times. Great doctors that have helped me in many situations. And again, don't be that percentage that does not know your body, that does not take care of yourself. It starts right here. and be your best advocate. Get out, and if you feel anything, and I'm pleading to the community now, anything that you have a question of, please don't wait, because it's curable, it's treatable. It's something that can be treated if caught early enough. So again, Diane, thank you for what you represent. I haven't known you long enough, but I love you. I do. I love you. And I'm so proud to say you sit here today.
Thank you. Mr. Fry?
George Fry again. I think it's time to address the men in this audience and in this county, and the men in the United States. I have prostate cancer. My doctor got a hold of it early. I've been through a myriad of tests. Thanks to my doctor catching it early enough, I'm going to start radiation in about 2 weeks. I plead with men, all ages, to be sure to get a PSA test. It's just a blood test that determines whether you have prostate cancer or not. So, once again, please go get a PSA test to determine whether you have it or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, we'll come back to the board. Supervisor Garamendi.
Do you want to make a motion, or do you want to make a motion?
Let's just take a second and let's all reflect upon those who have succumbed to this disease, and gather ourselves courage for the fights that are ahead, for our sisters, for our mothers, for our wives, for our daughters. And I'd like to make a motion.
So moved by Supervisor Garamendi.
I will second.
Second by Supervisor Mills and Platt. No further public comment. Call for a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0, unanimous.
Now, therefore be it proclaimed that the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors proclaims the month of October 2017 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in Calaveras County. This passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors of the County of Calaveras, State of California, this 10th day of October 2017.
Diane,
You're the one asking.
I think you need to be up front. Okay.
Come on.
Public health. Do what she says.
Smile, yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be taking a 15-minute break right now. We'll resume in 15 minutes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Are we on? There we go.
We're on.
Before we proceed, I'd like to invoke executive privilege if I could. And I'd like to have Chief Robitelli and Chief Johnson stand up for us, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we had some very severe fire crisis in Sunday, Monday, and this morning, and I want a public recognition for these two chiefs of police and their fine job their staff did. Madam Clerk.
Okay, so before we get into public comment, I'm just going to make a brief announcement, and that is that item 16 on your regular agenda, which is to receive a report from staff, Cal OES, and local organizations regarding the ongoing Butte Fire recovery, is going to be heard later in the agenda after or prior to item 22, which is the administrative office receive information on FEMA funding delays. So just so that you're aware that the Butte Fire report will be later in the agenda, instead of the first item of the regular agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Public comment. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the Board of Supervisors. I have a question and then I have some comments. The question is do you plan to meet in the board chambers next Tuesday or the town hall? I think it's going to be, I would recommend that you meet in the town hall. I think we're going to have a huge crowd here next Tuesday.
Mr. Fry, we'll address that after your public speaking.
Okay,
session.
fine, thank you. I was really taken back by the fact that some people in the public are seeking to recall Jack Garamendi. Not only was I taken back, I was stunned. I don't understand why every time we turn around, somebody's recalling somebody on the Board of Supervisors. And of all people, Jack Garamendi. This man is a pillar in the community. And why are we using the recall towards this man? I firmly believe that recalls should be for such things as malfeasance or somebody that's on the board that has truly done something that has been discovered as being illegal. The recall system, in my humble opinion, is not for the kind of thing that Supervisor Jack Garamendi is being recalled for. It just really disgusts me. I don't understand what our citizens are coming to. We finally get what I consider a really good board of supervisors, and somebody wants to attack one of the members. And I consider Jack a good supervisor, and I consider him a friend. And I've known Jack ever since he was a young man. And when he became an Eagle Scout in the chambers in Sacramento.
Thank you, Mr. Fry.
Good morning, gentlemen. Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. My comment has to do with funding of the Sheriff's Department. I saw an article on television a couple of weeks ago indicating that the city of Stockton is going to be hiring 50 new policemen. And of course, immediately I'm thinking that's going to draw people from rural areas down to the city of Stockton, because their starting pay is $67,500 a year, plus they have a $6,000 signing bonus. And they also pay for the academy training for their new recruits. And this is difficult to compete with. Now, I checked with the Human Resources Department here, And they tell me, and I may have misheard, but they tell me that the starting salary for a sheriff's deputy here is somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000 a year. And that's a significant difference. We're only 50 miles from the city of Stockton. And it's amazing that the city of Stockton, who not very long ago declared bankruptcy, I think, is hiring 50 new policemen. Now, we've got a sheriff's department that's not only carrying out its normal and everyday duties, but I read the other day that it was, in a local paper, it was helping to pursue and capture a criminal that was wanted in another state. I mean, in addition to having to deal with all of these illegal marijuana grows, they have to do these kinds of things. Well, they don't have to, but they do them. And they got a homicide they had to deal with up country. So they've got a lot on their plate. And the way that the new recruits are being paid for in the city of Stockton is that in 2013, the city voters in Stockton passed Measure A, which increased the sales tax within the city limits 0.75%. Well, that's, when you think about it, that's nothing. We're one of the few counties in the state of California that charges only the basic sales tax rate, 7.25. We have no additional costs tacked on there or increases tacked on to the basic rate. Now, I, for one, would be more than happy to pay additional sales tax here in Calaveras County for law enforcement. I'd like to see something in the way of increased funding for them, and one way is, I guess, as City of Stockton and other agencies have done, is to have an increase in sales tax.
Thank you, sir.
That's red?
That's time.
Oh,
Time's up, sir.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before our next speaker, I told Mr. Fry that we would address his question. Mr. Fry and folks, arrangements have been made to have the October 17th meeting in this boardroom with the adjacent courtroom also available for seating with audio and visual, so you can see what's happening, and if you wish to speak, you'll be able to come into the chambers and speak. So that's been addressed, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Sandy Miner, Trap Mountain Ranch, D2. I would ask the board chair for permission to perhaps run over my allotted time, probably by about 40 seconds. Some of you know.
I'm going to be quite stern on the 3-minute rule. I'm sorry.
Okay, then I will cut it up as much as I can. Some of you know I was the lone cultivator, non-county employee involved in crafting the urgency ordinance. I asked to be included, and since that time, I've felt conflicted over my involvement, but my turmoil was calmed by a card I received in the mail recently. And to paraphrase, I was thanked for all I did and all I continue to do to speak out on problem grows, as well as the work that I had done to try and come to some level of happy medium. What that card represented to me is that people do see regulation working. Many would like to see the work begun with the urgency ordinance put toward the development of a permanent ordinance. In my opinion, where Calaveras County has significantly failed its constituents is in not continuing the dialogue towards a permanent ordinance using valuable information gleaned from the program. One glaring gap involves the analysis to ensure costs of the UO are recovered and set appropriately going forward as required under 1795.250D. This was to be completed within a year, yet it apparently sits on the CAO's desk in an administrative draft form. Draft, by definition, means preliminary. It's a preliminary vision of a piece of writing, hardly completed. This means the county has failed to meet the one-year deadline stipulated within the urgency ordinance, and continuing to ignore this may result in someone taking formal action under the county's mandatory responsibility to enforce its civil code under Cal 815.6. Our Planning Commission is recommending a ban or much stricter regulation. No one disputes there are opportunities brought to light via the urgency ordinance for improved regulation. Few can ignore the monetary contribution made to the county budget this year. Nor can one ignore the devastation looming before this county should this revenue stream become non-existent. Likewise, we must also consider factors brought to light by Mr. Gary Stevens via his recent communication to the Pine Tree. The card I received in the mail came at the best possible time to fortify myself for what I am about to say. I have before me in my hand 4 tax bills for parcels of land in Mountain Ranch. These represent over $7,000 in tax revenue. Should you, as a collective board, proceed with a ban over more restrictive yet permissive regulation, I will take that to mean that you have little value in a consistent revenue stream or an enforceable ordinance. As a result, I'm changing my payment habits in a manner that I hope others will perhaps embrace. I will no longer pay my property taxes in full prior to the due date. I will pay them twice a year in person, increasing the overall cost to the county. Furthermore, I will pay them the day before a penalty is applied. I encourage every Calaveras resident to consider doing likewise.
Further public speaking? Sir? Matt, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Members of the board, Mr. Chairman, my name is Matt Clark, and I'm a resident of Angels Camp, and I also run a law office down there. Beginning at the beginning of the year, our first meeting at the end of February, I called a group of what I hoped would be like-minded individuals, people who wanted to see this county move forward and to put the issues of cannabis versus no cannabis behind us, and to create a regulatory scheme and a system that would provide not only for safety and security and the orderly conduct of this industry in our county, but would allow for the prosperity and the tax dollars that come from that. A middle way, we thought, was available. And we began doing what we were shocked to see nobody else was doing, which is start looking for those solutions. How can we create an industry here that doesn't bother people, that doesn't get in their faces, that works with them and works with the county to create a system that works for everyone, to keep the money flowing in without the complaints and the difficulties that have emerged under the urgency ordinance. We worked on that every week for almost a year now. And I'm pleased to state that we have something here. I'd like to thank everybody that came to my office with their open minds and their ideas. I think we did amazing things, and I think we came up with a lot of solutions. I've heard many times that there is no alternative, that there's no good way of doing this. I have a document here. It is a draft ordinance from the CCRC. That's the group that met at my office, the Calaveras Cannabis Regulatory Coalition. And it contains exactly the sort of solutions that I think that we need. And with your permission, I would like to submit it into the record now.
Clerk?
Thank you all for your time and attention.
Thank you, sir. Further public comment? Dr. Smith?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm speaking to you today because a number of the citizens here believe that a violation of the public process has occurred. Why do we believe this is so? On the sheet I just handed you, you will find a two-part image. On the top, you will see the objectives listed in the draft regulation, or the draft EIR. And on the bottom, you'll see an image of the slide presented by the Planning Department during the original scoping session for the EIR held in July of last year. Please note the difference between the two under number one, under objective number one, where the phrase, "or to prohibit those uses within the constraints of state law," have been added. As far as anyone can tell, this change in the scope of the EIR was effected without a public hearing or a public notice of a hearing in which this decision was made. In fact, we believe the scope of the EIR was improperly changed by a poll of the board, not a formal vote, and without any notice of public input whatsoever. If we are mistaken about this, please show us the agenda and cite the meeting where the public was afforded its right to weigh in on this essential and legally required part of the EIR process. In the absence of a properly noticed scoping session for the EIR in which the objectives of the EIR were changed, we have to object to the consideration of the proposed ban ordinance under said EIR at the next meeting to be held on October 17th. We urge you to not hold a vote on this ban until the county provides a proper EIR process that affords the people their right to participate in an open and transparent public process. This is essential. Can't mess with the public process. Just can't. It's one of the great things about our country. We experience it here every day. We come in here. It's an awesome process. That's all I have, so thank you for hearing me out. For the record, that's not a threat. It's just an assessment. It's just what we believe is the situation right now legally. I think it's pretty much a done deal. I think it's very clear what the law says on this matter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Schrenke?
I'm Vicki Reinke, Angels Camp. I wasn't prepared to be speaking, but I have to say something about what was just said. And I feel that the environmental impact report has caused more problems with this process than we imagined, because I knew it from the beginning. But if you look at CEQA, you look at how an EIR is supposed to be decided, CEQA is an environmental document. And what you do is you have a project that you do, okay? Our project that we heard from the Board of Supervisors was to ban. That was the new project. You take that project and you look to see, is it going to affect your environment? That's the purpose of it, nothing else. So if you were to look at a ban and you look at sequence and the EIR, it should have not needed an EIR because there is no effect to the environment for banning the cultivation of marijuana in our county. No effect on the environment. So this was the thing, and I've said it from the very beginning, that this is just a ploy to delay. So the project is a ban. A ban does not need an EIR under CEQA. That should be the answer, and we should move on. Because now you hear, you might get a lawsuit because you didn't do, what? You know what? We've seen this already throughout this county, and I was a victim of it all. And that was the stopping of our propositions or our measures to get them on ballots from the people. Twice we tried it, twice we got denied because of lawsuits by the marijuana industry. And so I guess I just want you to step back and look at the reality of it, and you tell me straight face if you don't think that an EIR is not required under a ban, because I believe that that is true. I've read CEQA rules, I've read what their purpose is, and this would require no EIR on a ban. So anyway, I just couldn't, I had to get up and at least ask you to please think about that. Thanks.
Thank you.
So broadcast is Valley Springs. Preamble. We've been going at this cannabis question for a while. You may vote on a ban next Tuesday. If the vote is 3-2, you as a board will have failed, no matter which way it goes. You've had a lot of time. You should be able to find a way to a third way that gains a 5-0 vote. Anything less is a failure. Now, I enter uncharted waters where I have to say, I may not be sure of my facts here at all. I believe that I read somewhere, which I cannot now find, that the ban as it will be structured will be for 5 years, renewable after that 5-year period. However, no one can confirm that except one person I spoke to this morning who said they saw that in an earlier draft. So I'm arguing against something that may not even be in there. In case it is, just let me say, the number 5 years is a terrible idea. 3 or 4, 6 or 7, then subject to renewal would all be acceptable. 5 is terrible for this reason. Prop 64 was written so that there can be no monopolies for 5 years. After that, it's open season. So if you're sitting on a board of RJ Reynolds or Seagram's, the best you can hope for right now is that a bunch of counties in an area that is perfect for growing will all enact 5-year bans, renewable after that, at which point you're eligible to come in and say, we'll put $50 million in your general fund, give us the monopoly. And if anyone is urging 5 years be in there, I'm going to be suspect, are they working on the side with such entities that are not now able to work on the marijuana question because they're on the sidelines as a result of Prop 64. So beware of 5 years if it's there, and I don't even know if it is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Trent Fiorino, District 1. One of the things I hear a lot coming from the pro-grow side is they're always talking about fairness to them. I want to speak on fairness to the citizens of Calaveras, again, who have tried on a couple occasions to get it on a vote. We wanted to vote on this issue. Why were high-priced lawyers brought in to keep it off the ballot? Because they knew how it was going to go. They knew that the citizens of this county don't want this. And is it fair that our vote keeps being taken away? They keep coming up with these delay tactics. That's not fair to us either. You know, our voice is being ignored. And I'm kind of tired of hearing about fairness on their side, how unfair it is to them for this and for that. What about the fairness to us? You know, we're being pushed to have to use whatever part of the political process that can be used to get our voice heard. We want our voice to be heard. And right now, that's all we can do is turn to all of you and ask you, please listen to the citizens of this county. We don't want commercial cultivation in this county. It's bringing pollution into this county that we're not going to be able to get rid of. They talk about the money that's going to be brought into this county and all the wonderful things you're going to be able to do with it. What's going to happen is all that money is going to go towards trying to clean up the pollution in the environment. The pesticides and things that are being used, and sure, you can say, well, those are illegal grows. Well, the illegal grows were welcomed into this county when you did an urgency ordinance, because you opened the door wide open and they said, hey, we like cannabis, come on in and grow it. And they can hide around all the so-called registered grows. That's what this idea of regulation has brought us. It's brought us a lot of illegal activity that is polluting our county. It's going to get into the watershed. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. But we haven't had the runoff yet this year. When it shows up in the lakes, what about the lawsuits that are going to come to us from that? It's going to bankrupt this county. The pollution that's already here is going to take every bit of money that's going to come in from the cannabis grows. In fact, if you took all the money they're making, it probably isn't going to clean up what we already have. So we need to put a stop to it. This is not, we're not taking away their right to smoke pot. We're not taking away the right to grow their personal stash.
Thank you, sir. Further public comment? Morning.
Hi. There's been an exponential growth of grow sites. And if you don't believe it, look at the county GIS. The sheriff is not able to keep up with what's going on out there. And I am very concerned for law enforcement, for their safety, and for the people that have to go out and do the job that they need to do to stem this. In Washington and Oregon, when they legalized marijuana, 50% of the felonies were cut. In other words, cut in half. And the reason is that the law enforcement were no longer allowed to, if they smell the stuff in the car when they stop it, they cannot do anything. It's illegal. And so therefore they can't go through the car and find the felonies. And so now that's happening in California. And so whatever things that you see happening as felonies, there's a lot more of them out there. And it puts our law enforcement people not only in danger, but it demoralizes them because they have to go out and put their life on the line. And then these people don't get anything but a slap on their hands. And this Cole Amendment that was written for the people that are trying to legalize it in their states, it says Congress has determined that marijuana is a dangerous drug and that illegal distribution of the sale of marijuana is a serious crime that provides a significant source of revenue to large-scale criminal enterprises, gangs, and cartels. The Department of Justice is committed to enforcement of the CSA consistent with those determinations. And of course, I have to skip over a lot of important stuff. These priorities will continue to guide the Department's enforcement of the CSA against marijuana-related conduct. Thus, this memorandum serves as a guidance to the Department attorneys and law enforcement to focus their enforcement resources and efforts, including prosecution, on persons or organizations whose conduct interferes with any one or more of these priorities, regardless of state law.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Mr. McManus?
Good morning. Bill McManus, Chairman of the Committee to Ban Commercial Cultivation. What I see going on right now is a familiar process of misdirection. Some people would liken it to rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. While everyone is concerned about the lack of regulation, the failure of the urgency ordinance, the promise of money, all these other issues that grab your attention, grab the attention of others, and everyone spins on it, the one thing that is not being addressed is the environmental threat to our county. As far as I can tell, no one in this county knows what they're finding out there. At least they're not telling anyone. We have site after site after site that has not been assessed and it has not been cleaned up. And if we liken it to the Butte Fire, which you're going to be talking about today, the recovery, each site that was cleaned up cost the county an average of $230,000 to make that property safe. That's on a small footprint of a single-family home. If you can extrapolate that out and say how much would a out-of-control or a non-compliant pot grow cost, it's exponentially much higher. So if we have 1,000 grows out there, and I don't know what, no one knows what the number is. Let's say it's 1,000, and it costs $230,000 each to clean them up when they go. That's $230 million. Real easy to do the math. Add a comma and 3 zeros. If that $230,000 is off, and we've been told it's off by at least a factor of 4 from hazmat teams in Sacramento, do the math on that. Pretty soon you're in the billions of dollars. Measure C is not going to pay for any of that. The county is not going to have money for that. There is no source other than state or federal Superfund cleanup monies that can take on something like that. So when you're talking about what we're going to do moving forward, it's easy to remedy most of the public nuisance complaints. They're noise related, generators, dogs, water trucks, parties, whatever. They go away when the grow goes away. What doesn't grow away is the silent killer that is out there now. And those are the chemicals and the contaminants that are being put in the soil and the water of this county. And I don't think you want that as a legacy of this board where you let this happen and Calaveras County becomes a county that none of us recognize anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public 30-minute limit? Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Ma'am, we've reached our 30-minute limit, so we'll be taking up public comment at the end of the regular agenda. After, that's correct. Okay. Madam Clerk?
Consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Ladies and gentlemen, is there any member of the public in the chambers that wish to have any item on the consent agenda pulled for review? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Is there any board member or member of staff that would like to have any item pulled from the consent agenda for review by the board today? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Supervisor Clapp.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Tofinelli. Any public comment? Seeing none, back to the board for a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0, unanimous.
Moving on to the regular agenda, we'll move to item 17, which is from Health and Human Services Agency, to accept a presentation on the continuum of care reform, a multi-systemic approach to transforming the child welfare system.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Kristen Brinks, Health and Human Services Agency. Today we are here because we wanted to provide your board information about a considerable shift in the way that child welfare services are being delivered statewide and in here in Calaveras County. My colleague Laura Larson will be providing more detailed information about that, but before she begins, I wanted to provide a little bit of context as to how this presentation and many of the different projects and work that we're doing in Health and Human Services relate under a larger scale strategic plan that we have in our agency. HHSA recently finalized a strategic plan that was developed by all members of our team and with input from many data points and various other community partners that we've worked with throughout the years. Our strategic plan centers around 4 central themes. Those themes are how we work together, how we listen and work with the community, how we communicate with each other, and how we show up. Today, we'll be providing your board information following more under the theme of how we listen and work with the community. We intend to periodically bring to your board little snippet presentations, 20 minutes or so, that kind of allow us to dive deeper and to provide you with additional information about various endeavors that we are embarking on or are in the process of working on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Laura.
Good morning. My name is Laura Larson, and I'm the Program Manager for Protective Services. I'm honored to stand before you this morning to talk about the innovative things that are happening throughout California in child welfare and how that's impacting Calaveras County. Just swipe it. I apologize, my batteries weren't working, so my boss has to help me out here. Basically, several years ago, the California counties came together and said, look, California has always been in the cutting edge of innovative practices in child welfare. But the problem was is that sometimes those innovative practices, they didn't stick. If you could imagine for a moment walking through a park with a bouquet of balloons, and as you let the balloons go, some of the balloons fly away, some of the balloons get caught in the trees and they kind of stay there. That was kind of what's been happening in California, is that there's all these innovative practices, but there's nothing really to encompass the practices. So the California core practice model is basically, their efforts are currently underway to go into effect January of 2018, but it's a practice that's going to help guide practice, service delivery, and decision making. The core practice model builds on the great work that's already been taking place in California, proven practices, research-based, and we know that the efforts work. The core practice model elements, basically over to the left, you'll see these are all of the different programs that encompass the core practice model. Off to the right there, I apologize, you can't really read that, but it's really our behaviors. It's our engagement. It's our assessment with our families. It's planning and service delivery. It's reassessment. It's teaming. And what does teaming mean? Teaming means we're sitting down with our families and with our community. And then, of course, transitions. As you can imagine, there's so much that we're all mandated to do, and some of the promising practices that we know work, they're not mandated, and therefore some counties can't get involved with that. So what we had happen is we had some legislation. It was called AB 403, which is the Continuum of Care Reform. And the reason AB 403 is significant and important is because it looked at the outcomes. What is child welfare doing for the children that they're serving? Are they better off after they've been involved with us? Are they worse off? In 2014, and again, I apologize, you can't read that. In 2014, we had just about 60,000 foster kids in placement in California. Of those 60,000 children, 3,000 of them were in what we call conjugate care. Conjugate care is a group home. Kristen, can you read the first one there? I can't read that one.
Yeah, over 1/3 have remained in congregate care longer than 3 years.
Then the second one?
About 1/3 of youth have remained in congregate care for more than 5 years. And then finally, 3,000 youth live in group home placements, congregate care.
So basically, for the youth who have mental health needs, behavioral needs, if we can't find them a foster home who is willing and able to meet their needs, oftentimes they get sent to a group home. The group homes could be in county, they could be out of county, and unfortunately, they could also be out of state. The next one. The outcomes for these youth is bleak. What we find is that children who remain in conjugate care longer than 2 years, they end up lifelong institutional behaviors. And of course they are, because they're in group homes, and these are not homes that are the nurturing, loving, caring type of care that you would get in a foster home. We also know that youth who stay in conjugate care longer than 2 years, they end up in different systems when they're done with child welfare, and those systems, unfortunately, are the mental health systems or the juvenile system. We also know that kids in group homes longer than 2 years, they have lower educational attainment, and the most tragic is that they end up homeless. So what does continuum care reform do? They're services that are coordinated and they're seamless. Basically, what are we doing as an agency, and how are we connecting with all the other providers in the community to serve the needs not only of our children, but of our families? They're active family and youth participation. For a very long time, child welfare has been the experts in everyone's family. So someone comes to our attention, we do an assessment, we do an investigation, we look at the family and we say, this is what you're doing wrong and this is what you need to get right. How does that ever even make sense? Continuum of care really causes us to stop and pause, and we ask the family and their community and their people, their tribe, whoever it might be, to sit down at the table with child welfare and collectively talk about what are we worried about, what's working well with this family, and what are our next steps to get the family on their own. It promotes positive outcomes for youth and families and mutual accountability across all systems and agencies. And this is done through, and the most important piece, and I didn't put it on there because I wanted to make sure I spoke about this, is that it's reducing the amount of children being placed in group homes. So now kids can only stay in a group home for up to 30 days. And after that 30 days, there has to be a reassessment, and we need to be actively looking for a foster home for that child. Resource Family is one of the programs that went into effect January of 2017, and basically it's looking at the foster homes that we are licensing, and anyone who wants to be a foster caregiver, from the start, they are licensed to be an adoptive home. Meaning, say they take a child into their home and then for some reason, several months later, the child does not reunify. That Resource Family can actually adopt. They don't have to stop and pause and go through another adoption process. It's done at the very beginning. It also helps us look at, in the very beginning of someone wanting to be a foster parent, they have to go through a psychosocial assessment. So that psychosocial assessment really gives us an in-depth understanding and view as to the person's background, their upbringing, their child rearing, maybe some traumas that they may have experienced in their life, and we have a better idea of what children would be a better fit for them. The other program that is part of continuum of care reform is Quality Parenting Initiative. If we're saying children are not served well in group homes and we need them to be in foster homes, well, we have to better equip our foster parents how to handle these children who have behaviors and who have mental health needs. And so the Quality Parenting Initiative really looks at the quality of parents that are coming in and saying, how do we support you? How do we train you? And how do we get you to be able to care for our children who already have a lot of needs before they come into their home and meet those needs and have it be a successful placement? KDA is something that you may have already heard. KDA went into effect. It was a lawsuit in the LA County back in 2012. But KDA just makes sure that any child that comes to the attention of child welfare, and we have an open child welfare case, that they are being referred to mental health for an assessment. This is to make sure that no child falls through the cracks and that a mental health need is not being met. Linkage, AB 429 is family unification. This is another great program where families, before they come to the attention of child welfare, if they're receiving CalWORKs benefits, the CalWORKs benefits can continue for the mother or the father. If their children are brought into care, well, they can continue to get services. Linkage also helps pay for programs that maybe the county cannot pay for the family. Parent Partners. Parent Partners is a wonderful program where we take parents who have gone through the child welfare process. What does that mean? Their children have been removed and they successfully reunified and their children were returned to their care. These folks come back as mentors, and they're mentors to our parents who are currently going through child welfare, to kind of help explain the process of what's going on, to support them, and most importantly, to encourage them that today might feel really terrible and the worst day of your life, but please know that together as a team we can get through this and your children can be returned to you as well. Safety Organized Practice. Safety Organized Practice is a wonderful program that provides tools for social workers how to engage our families, how to sit down at the table with our families, how to balance our assessments. As I mentioned before, child welfare has always done really great at looking at families like, what have they done wrong? What's the bad things that have happened? But we haven't always been successful in looking at their successes. Child welfare gives us this balance. We have to look at what's working well for the family, and we have to look at our worries with the family. And the tools involved with Safety Organized Practice gives us that balance. Bringing it all together, you may ask, well, what has this got to do with Calaveras County? I'm happy to report that January of 2017, Calaveras County implemented the RFA program. Prior to January, this county, we did not do foster care. We used our foster care agencies. So now we have about 14 homes that are currently being assessed, and we have, by the end of the year, we'll have about 40 RFA homes that actively will have foster kids placed with them and open to other kids who come into care. What's also interesting about RFA is that it's a real focus on family. So if someone's children are brought into care, we are actively searching and looking for relatives in the community, friends, families, relatives who can come and be the caregiver. This reduces the trauma that the children feel by going into a stranger's home, by putting them with an aunt or an uncle or a grandma or a grandpa. QPI, Calaveras County volunteered to be a county. We are the 22nd county in the state to be a QPI county, and we just actually finished our Resource Family branding process. So we're really excited about bringing that to Calaveras County. CFTs went into effect. A CFT is a child family team meeting. And basically what that is any time that child welfare is making a decision about a family, we are having a child family team meeting. Everyone is invited to the table. Therapists, the mother, the father, the family, the community, the tribe, their churches, whoever the family identifies as their support people, they're being invited to the table, and the table could be in their house, it could be in the community, it could be at my office. And we're talking about what are the needs of this child, what are the needs of this parent, and how do we collectively as a group support the family to get them to a better place. CFTs have been active since January, and we are very, very, very busy doing CFTs. Within the CFTs, we talk about placement. We talk about case plans. What do the parents and the child need in order to help them move them to a different space? Most importantly as well, we're doing commercial sexually exploited youth MDTs. So any youth that we believe is at risk of being exploited, we are actually having MDT meetings for that as well. Parent partners, as of May 2017, we have 3 parent partners, and these folks go over to our dependency court, and if there's a parent that's interested in having a mentor, they work with them, and they're volunteers doing that right now. KDA has been in effect in Calaveras County for some time. Same with linkage. Safety Organized Practice is in the implementation process. We've been doing that since about September of last year. I actually come to this county with about 2 years of experience in the Safety Organized Practice work. And I just want to share 2 success stories. In September, we had a father that 2 of his 3 children were already in the process of being referred off to adoptions because the mother was not successful in reunification, and nor was the father. They had a younger child who was born in the process of the case being open, and that baby was in the process of being sent off to adoptions as well. So what we did is we held a family team meeting, and we brought the father in, we brought the mother in, and all their support people. And we looked at how is this family different today as opposed to a year ago when they first came to our attention? And what we found was that there was a lot working well for the family. The father was sober. The father had a job. If you would have looked at him a year prior, you would have been like, nope, this is not going to work. He's not a safe father. But a year later, we were able to see there is something going right in this father's life that we can reconsider whether or not we can reunify his children. I will make a long story short. We went back to court and we asked the judge, can we please have an opportunity to work with this father again? And it's called a 387, where we reinitiated reunification services. The children were not sent to adoptions, and I will tell you, last month, those children went home. Well, they went home to their father in January, but we closed his case in last month. So 3 children who were going off to adoptions were reunified with their father. And that is all because of the folks in the county, the child welfare staff willing to stop for a moment, pause, take a look at what happened in the past, but also to reassess what was happening today, and to see, is there enough safety that we could reconsider this father? And we did that. And I stand here this morning to tell you, I have many other stories that I can tell you has happened in this county. So that's the most exciting piece, because not a lot of people have a happy perspective about child welfare if we come to your door. People say we take children and we don't ever give them back, and I think sometimes that's true. But I think now there's a shift in child welfare, and I really think that we are more motivated in sitting down and talking with the family and really partnering with them. Instead of being the boss and telling them what they need, we're talking with them and saying, what do you need? If you're struggling with meth use, what do you think would help you get rid of that habit? And actually listening to them, that's key to that. With all the changes that's happening, and there's so much more coming, we always have to, be mindful of funding. With funding, the core practice model provides a theoretical framework for the continuum of care. However, it's the CCR legislation that mandates the use of programs and practices that tend to improve child welfare incomes. As I mentioned before, the balloons floating away. Some counties just don't have the same revenues as other counties, LA County, for example. So promising practices, they float away because they can't stick. We don't have the money for that. But when legislation comes down the pike and legislation says, you will do this, well, what do you have to do? You have to do it. So there is some funding that has been provided, but some funding for CCR activities is provided through state and federal revenues, but the funding is based on estimates, and it doesn't really reflect the time and the staffing involved in doing this work. In closing, the Calaveras County Health and Human Service Agency, together with local government and community partners, are working together to ensure all families receive quality interventions and ensure every voice, the parents, the youth, the community, have a venue to share concerns and their successes. I don't say that as just a blurb on my closing or just something to say. If someone comes to our attention, we are sitting with their support people. We know it takes a village to raise a family. And you all up there might someday be called to come to a team decision meeting, a CSEC MDT meeting, or a family team meeting. Because all of our families, you never know when something's going to happen, and we have to come together and support each other. And so this is something that we truly, truly believe, and it's actually working. It's having positive impact on our families in Calaveras County. Together, we are dedicated to encouraging and strengthening our community in hopes of helping families overcome barriers, nurturing change, and improving lives. And with that, I really thank you for your time for listening to us.
I have a question before you leave. Okay. Very nice presentation, thank you. But I'm kind of wondering where the newly formed Calaveras CASA program fits into all of this, and if you are intertwining this program with the new CASA.
Absolutely. So CASA is very new. They're independent of child welfare, but we are partnering with them. And one of the things that I'm excited about CASA is that it's another support for our youth. It's another voice for the youth, especially if the youth are too young. We just now have 2 folks being sworn in to be CASAs, and we're really excited about that, because what I do know as a social worker, as a supervisor, and now as a manager, sometimes we get caught up in the hustle and bustle of work, and sometimes we don't have that moment to pause and just to really be reflective and listen to maybe what the child has to say, and CASA is going to provide that voice for us, so we're very excited about partnering with them. Any other questions?
Further questions?
This is not.
I'll take care. Oh.
I just wanted to provide just a little closing remark about this. During the county strategic planning process, we as department heads were asked what was on our radar, what were some of the trends that we were seeing, et cetera. And during that session, I shared that we were seeing in Health and Human Services, we were seeing the change towards this client-centered, holistic service delivery at the local level. And I think today is kind of an example of what I meant behind that. This is not, this continuum of care reform is so much bigger than just child welfare. This is the community. This is public health services, behavioral health services, the courts, the law enforcement. This is so much bigger. And did it come with enough money? No. I don't think things rarely do come with enough money, but we know that it's already providing some preliminary positive results. Our primary focus is ensuring the safety of the youth of our community, hands down. And the research is telling us that this is the way that we can kind of move towards that direction. So I just wanted to, again, kind of tie that up a little bit, that child welfare, no one's ever really happy when we're involved, but our aim as an agency is to ensure that that our team is providing professional, compassionate, essential services, and that those services, when their families are receiving those services, that they're feeling respected and that they're feeling that there's hope, and that's really, really important to us. We have a team of amazing, educated, passionate individuals that are part of Health and Human Services. They're taking part at state level work groups to actually craft policy that we're going to then be responsible for delivering, and we're really proud of that. So I just kind of wanted to add that last 2 cents.
Thank you. Further questions of staff by the board?
I just want to make a quick statement. You guys do incredibly hard work, and it is really work that impacts people and their lives and their future and all of our lives, and I want to thank you very much. There are a lot of jobs in the county that I think some of us think we can do. I can pick up a shovel pretty good, and I might be all right at math, but the shoulders that it takes to carry the load that you and your staff do every day to keep the children and the families together is exceptional, and I admire it greatly. Thank you.
Supervisor Mills.
Kristen, during the strategy session, the one statement that you made that still rings is the words client-centered. It's just something that we all have to focus on, but having been a foster parent with my wife for 3 kids, you realize that the ages of 14 to 18 is the critical time, and you either can turn them around and get them graduated from high school and start them on a career, or they're going to go somewhere else, and that's going to be a very big expense to society. So it's important that we really grasp hold of those 14 to 18-year-olds and try to see where we can put them into an environment that gives them the opportunity to emulate what it is that makes a successful family, because they didn't come from one. So they're sponges at that point. They're wanting to know what it is that's right and how to make it work. So if there's families out there that don't see the importance of it, maybe this is a challenge for you. I'm putting it out there. You know, take that opportunity to go be a part of this, because it will change you as well. Thank you.
Seeing no further requests by the board.
Just to point, all three of my kids, foster kids, they're still kids. We're successful.
Public comment? Any public comment? Seeing no public comment, Madam Clerk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Item 18 is from the Auditor Controller to introduce and waive reading of an ordinance establishing qualifications for the Office of the Auditor Controller, amending Ordinance 526, Section 2, 1969, and approve a summary publication of the ordinance.
Hi, Rebecca Callan, Auditor Controller.
Ms. Callan.
This is something that I've talked about doing since I took office, and it's something that my predecessor tried to bring forward to the Board of Supervisors right before she retired. In addition, I know that the former Treasurer Tax Collector tried to bring something together for qualifications of office before she retired. And at that point, the Board of Supervisors did not pass it. Their feeling was that by putting qualifications that are allowed under the government code in force, that may limit the allowance of people to run for office. I think at that point when that decision was made, there was an idea that elected department heads were more administrative in nature, and that we all had staff to do the work. And the reality is, we're not administrative in nature, and we don't have staff to do all the work. So by not having qualifications for positions such as mine puts the county in a pretty dire situation. We're one of the few counties that actually doesn't have these qualifications passed. Most counties do have qualifications for office of Auditor Controller. So most of my colleagues are kind of shocked that we don't have anything in place. Really, the only thing you have to have is you have to be registered to vote, meaning you have to live in the county and you have to be 18. We currently have, under our ordinance, an outdated qualifications for office, but it doesn't apply. And so it just gets ignored when any filing for office occurs. Even when I filed for office, you know, I had asked, you know, are these qualifications valid? And at that point, council said, no, they're not, because government code had changed from the point that this ordinance was passed. So at that point, we had no qualifications for office and continue to not have qualifications for office. So I'm asking that we update the ordinance, the existing ordinance, and replace the language that would be in line with what the current government code is, which is that you would have to have a CPA, or you would have to have a bachelor's degree with similar fiscal responsibilities and continuous service in those duties. You could have a certificate from an Institute of Internal Auditors, or you've served as a county auditor or a deputy auditor or assistant auditor for a period of not less than 3 years. I think that it's imperative. I'm also adding that there be qualifications for maintaining office. I have always acted as though these qualifications were in place, so I always made sure I did my continuing education every single year. I think it's really important that we stay apprised of what's coming down the pike, whether it's governmental accounting standards statements that are changing or changes with the State Controller's Office. I think what's important to understand is that the role of the Auditor Controller has changed throughout the years, It used to be a lot less dynamic reporting, a lot less mandated reporting, and I think what has happened throughout the years is it has become way more rigorous, much more difficult to do all of the reporting that's necessary. And I think the basis was to try to make the reporting be more in line with transparency for the public, although a lot of what we're having to do, the general public would have no idea what those financial statements are saying. So many of the financial statements that we're putting together are really used by bond rating agencies, by leasing companies, by bond holders or people who are interested in purchasing bonds. But it seems like a lot of the statements that are being required under GASB now are kind of more in line with that. But that has created a mandate on my office and on the role of auditor controller that makes it fairly difficult from where it came from. So I think it's really important to have these qualifications in place. And that's all I've got.
Question of the auditor? I have a couple of questions. Per your presentation, you said that our qualifications for the auditor are outdated, but they're what's legal on the books.
They're not, no.
They're not
They're there,
legal, but
they're there,
the
but
county's
we just ignore them.
qualifications. Have we ever explored changing that? Do you have any history on that?
I just know that when I filed for office, I asked with regards to the qualifications that were on the books at that time, and the opinion that I received from Jim Jones at that point, and I know that Karen Varney, that's who it went to, that they didn't apply because the government code had changed subsequent to those being adopted. So the ordinance language is missing sections of the government code. So his opinion was that they couldn't be followed because of that. So in essence, they don't exist.
And you applied when, Ms. Callen?
That was in 2010.
10?
Yeah.
So for the last 6 years at least, we've been kind of flying blind, huh?
Yeah, and I didn't bring them forward. I did not bring this forward as soon as I took office because that board was not interested in passing qualifications for office. They actually rejected my predecessor and the treasurer tax collector at that time from bringing forward qualifications for office. So strategically, that wasn't a good board to bring qualifications for office to. I was going to bring it forward with the following board, but we had a lot of other pressing items to deal with. And now I'm just would like to get it done. I've talked about it since I took office. I put it in my recommended budget memo that I wanted to bring this forward. So I'm bringing it forward.
County Council, would it be pertinent to maybe fix our qualifications before we even consider, fix our ordinance before we even consider qualifications? Make
That's
sure
what this is
they
doing.
they adhere to current law?
That is what this is doing.
Okay. So we're fixing our ordinance with this?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
For this position, but there's other elected positions. Does the ordinance affect those also?
No, because that had not been adopted. Qualifications for the other offices haven't been adopted.
Correct. Our current ordinance is only specific to the auditor controller's office. I will certainly look at the opinion that you referenced before I got to the county to review that. But what is before you is introduction of a new ordinance that would essentially bring our county code as it relates to the auditor controller's position in line with what is allowed under the government code.
What is before us here, naming these 4 bullet points, is within government code. It's not adding anything or subtracting anything as far as auditor, controller, and government code.
It's the government code.
It is the government.
And as I understand this correctly, the current government code require one of the following in order to file for office or maintain office. Bullet points, valid certificate of the California Board of Accountants and CPA, a degree, Bachelor of Science, well, actually a BA, and a certificate from an internal auditors organization for the Institute, and a person who has served as county auditor, deputy auditor, or assistant auditor for a continuous period of not less than 3 years. We, in your presentation, you spoke about our surrounding counties and things. What are their requirements? What are their status? Are they requiring CPAs?
They're the exact same requirements.
I'm
They're
sorry,
the
what?
exact same requirements. They're the exact same requirements.
Exact same requirements?
Yes.
What is the majority of the counties in our similar situation? Do they have CPAs as auditors?
Some have CPAs, some don't. Some
have any-
some
do you
are
have any data
some are
on that?
assistant auditors that have become auditors. Some are like me, where it's a bachelor's or master's degree in accountancy or a similar field with a background in accounting. It's kind of an array. And some of them would take, some of them were kind of homegrown within the respective department. A lot of auditor controllers' offices used to have CPA programs in them. With a lot of changes that occurred with regards to how you can get your CPA, those programs are going away because you can't homegrow your CPAs anymore because there's not an independence in an auditor controller's office because you can't necessarily do an internal audit, which auditing is a portion in order to get your required hours to get certified as a CPA. And you can't be independent to do those audits. So I know that a lot of counties are looking at maybe pairing up with another county and having their staff audit another county's staff under that respective CPA. So I think we're going to see a change where there's probably going to be less and less CPAs actually becoming auditor controllers because you can make more money as a CPA outside of the public sector. And so you might see a lot more where it's kind of a bachelor's, master's degree, a certificate in internal audits, or prior deputies or assistants coming forward.
So, you qualify as an auditor position under these requirements? Under the bachelor?
I qualified with these requirements even if they had been in place when I originally.
Is it the bachelor or the bachelor? What do you qualify? What bullet items out of these 4?
It's number 2 with 5 years of senior fiscal management. It's not just having a bachelor's degree. It's having a bachelor's degree or equivalent and having that extensive fiscal management responsibility.
Give me a second here, please. Bachelor's degree with accredited university or college or other 4-year institution with a major accounting or equivalent 5 years. Okay. I agree with the 3 of the 4 bullet points, but I have a problem with the 4th one. I think this might have been misleading at time, not during your term of service, Ms. Cowan. I'm just trying to look towards the future here. I agree with you that the qualification must be updated.
Well, I think.
It's the
excuse me,
government
that's
code,
in
so I
there.
don't know if we can pick and choose.
If you have an auditor that resigns or dies or something, then the board appoints. And if they serve for the 3 years and finish the term, then they can run for that office, I think is what it's trying to do.
I see. So that's kind of a temporary position then.
It's not, this is not about an appointment. This is about running for office. So you could be the assistant auditor controller or the deputy auditor controller. It doesn't mean you're guaranteed the position of auditor controller. You still have to file for office, you still have to run for office, and it's dependent on the electorate.
But we have the right to appoint if you don't finish the term.
If I got hit by a bus, or, yes, you would.
We have the right,
Yeah.
and I think this is what it's trying to address is that situation, in my opinion.
No, actually, the 4th bullet is actually a provision of the government code. It was actually taken directly verbatim out of the government code. It's Government Code 26945D, and that is one of 4 ways that you could qualify to run. And so it's for, it's not just to address filling vacancies, it is actually a qualification to be eligible to run for office.
And I understand. It is by law, the auditor controller position, one that has to be elected.
It is not a constitutional
It's not,
position,
yeah.
if that's what you're referring to.
So, yeah. Here in California, I mean, here in Calaveras, we do have an elected auditor, obviously, per an ordinance, our ordinance.
Yep, most counties, not all of the counties,
Not
but
all.
most of the counties do have an elected auditor controller, an elected, and they either have an elected treasurer or tax collector, or it's a combined office. The only constitutional officers would be the assessor, the sheriff, and the district attorney.
So in essence, if I completed 3 years of a accredited university and was a auditor or a deputy auditor or assistant auditor for a continuous period of not less than 3 years, I could actually run for this office, couldn't I? Because I meet that fourth requirement. Not that I would, Ms. Callan. Please understand.
You want to come over and be my assistant?
I wouldn't want your job.
You actually would just have to qualify for one of them. So if you were the deputy auditor in another county and you chose to move here, that's it. You can run for office. If you move here.
And you can hold that office.
And you can
per our
hold that
ordinance,
office.
per
You
this
just had to
ordinance,
have been a
correct.
deputy auditor here or in another county for not less than 3 years. And that deputy auditor would not have necessarily been required to have a bachelor's degree.
Yeah, that's right. How do you feel about that, being an auditor? Do you think that's a good position for the county?
Well, I don't think we can pick and choose. This is the government code. So this is what the state is allowing us under government code to allow for minimum qualifications. So I don't believe that we can pick the two that we want. It's one of the 4 bullet points.
Kind of all or nothing,
It's,
right?
that's my understanding.
Is that correct, Counsel?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on this, the 4th bullet, number D. It's not just about appointing, because for instance, if somebody who served in a different jurisdiction were to relocate to Calaveras County and wanted to run for office here, for whatever reason, it wasn't a requirement that they have a bachelor's degree or where they would qualify under A, B, or C, but they did hold one of the positions that would qualify them to run for office in D. That is what the government code allows for. It is one of the 4 options that's what the government code provides. But it's not just for someone who has been in these positions local. I mean, certainly that would be an option where, for instance, if there was a deputy county auditor who wanted to run for that position, whether it be against the current auditor controller, or if the auditor controller wasn't running to remain or keep the seat, that would be another option for them to qualify to at least reach the ballot.
Okay,
And that, you know, I don't go down this road, but that being said, if they were an auditor somewhere else, they would have had to qualify under the other 3 bullet points in order to get their 3 years in.
I was just meaning if they were, for instance, a chief deputy county auditor, which is one of the allowances under D. So.
Yeah. But by not doing anything, you're basically saying you just need to be 18 and registered to vote. And I would really ask you to think about that, because we don't have staff in place to do the complex accounting that this position is doing. We just don't. We went from 13 staff in the auditor controller's office to 9. Those positions that we no longer have, those were the higher level positions. Those were accountant, auditor twos that had high experience levels with accounting, that had high levels of ability. We don't have them anymore. So that work falls on me. And so I just think it's important that we ensure that we have qualifications that if I get hit by a bus or decide I don't want to run anymore or win the lotto, walk off on the sunset, that you have someone who can come in and be, you know, a good member of this county and who can still carry on a role, because there really is a role for this position, and it's not an administrative role. It's a in the weeds accountant. So.
You mentioned that you don't have sufficient staff to complete the role of the auditor's office, and what have we done to increase that staff and solve that problem? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I want the public to understand what the situation is. So give your answer towards that, if you will.
We were able to get one staff person in, but that was really because of all of the cost accounting and emergency work that needed to be done. There's an extensive amount of accounting when we take on public assistance grants and the CDAA grants, and that was an additional role I could not absorb myself. So something had to give, and I didn't think that that was a good place to just dump it. So we did request an additional staff person, an accountant, an account tech for at that time, and then they have been working on the, and for two reasons. Number one, we were one person deep in payroll, which is not a good place to be, and the backup for payroll is me, which is not a good place to be. So I asked for that account tech to help back payroll up so that we could get some continuity there, and then also work on the emergency cost accounting that needed to be done, whether it be Butte Fire and then it was Winter Storm. So that's what that position is for. But in order, in essence, to try to take work off of me, really nothing. We haven't added any additional high-level staff that can do that. And I already have my entire office working out of class as it is, just to do what we need to do, so.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Callen. Supervisor Mills, do you have questions?
Just a couple things here. I know that the CE time that's mentioned comes right out of the Business and Professions Code. However, the code is very quiet on the fact that if anybody doesn't meet those CE time requirements, there's no penalty for not doing it.
No.
Which is kind of weird.
Probably like a public flogging if someone asked a PRA to see proof of whatever, but yeah.
Scare somebody to death with
Yeah.
that. And I understand the importance of succession planning. I refer to Mono County because there are counties that are so small that they can't find anybody. And secondly, succession planning is a very critical element to how that department continues to function going forward. I'm concerned whether or not, do we need to be more or less strict? In other words, must we accept the Business and Profession Code in its entirety, or can we make any modifications to it to ensure we have a good, sound succession plan?
Generally, local jurisdictions have the ability to make your local laws more strict than state law,
But not less.
but not less, typically.
Okay. Then maybe I should have looked her way.
That's why I looked that way.
Question. So the point is that I think I would defer to your background to decide whether or not bullet point 4 is valuable enough to keep in there, or whether this board should consider removing it. And I also have to think about succession planning when we talk about it.
And again, it's not, in reading the government code, it's that whole section that we would be adopting. We're not picking and choosing which section, is my understanding.
What you're proposing is that it is identical to the government code, so it would dovetail straight across the board with state law. is what she is proposing to the board.
Maybe I should rephrase the question. And that if someone had, bullet point 4 had that level of experience and nothing more, would that present a specific challenge to a department if that was to occur, that was the only level of experience they had, and then they suddenly came from Mono County and said, I'm qualified to do this? You see where I'm going?
There's always going to be, you know, whether we took a, you know, deputy auditor from another county that didn't have any requirements to be a deputy county or to be a deputy auditor controller, or you know, what's our, you know, so there's different opinions as to what 5 years of senior fiscal management is. So that's always something that is a potential, but right now we have nothing. So I'm asking for us to have something.
So you're suggesting to adopt it as it is right now, and if we want to come back and look at bullet point number 4 a little more closely or have a better definition, that's something we could do in the future?
Yes.
Council, then we cannot accept this ordinance unless we have all 4 qualifications. We can't drop bullet point 4 on our own then, is that correct?
Yes.
Making that stricter more, making that more strict than state law?
Yes, we could. We can be more strict, we can't be less strict.
Right.
So
Is that,
if
am
we
I correct
remove-
in that assumption?
Correct. If that is what the board wished to do, you can make things more restrictive than state law. Typically, for staff, if it dovetails with state law, that is typically what is recommended, but that is certainly within the board's discretion to do.
All right. I just want to make sure the board understood that.
I'm concerned, Chair, that another person would come into that position having had that level of experience, in essence, in name only. And that might create some additional challenges down the road. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I agree. Any further questions of Ms. Callen by the board? Council?
I would just note, I mean, granted, every jurisdiction is different with different minimum qualifications. This would certainly be up to Ms. Callen because she is the department head bringing this forward. But from at least what I have experienced, positions that are higher level deputy, you know, chief deputies, chief assistant, assessors typically have a minimum qualification that would include, for instance, a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or something else, which may qualify them in one of the other levels. I'm just putting that out there that the likelihood that there would be a single candidate that only qualified for the ballot under D and D alone is probably fairly limited.
It's going to be pretty small. Most of the assistants would qualify under item 2, or they might qualify under item 1, depending on if they're from a larger county that had a CPA program.
I have a question.
Supervisor Tofinelli.
Is there currently anybody in your office other than you that meets any of these qualifications?
My assistant does.
Your assistant?
Actually, all of my management staff have bachelor's degree in accounting or a similar qualification. My assistant actually has a master's degree in accounting. And I think the issue with the accountant auditor ones that I have is that I don't know if I could argue that they have the 5 years of senior fiscal management, depending on what level we're talking about. But my assistant does qualify under 2.
And several would qualify under the bullet point number 4?
One would qualify. My assistant would qualify under 4.
Thank you.
But most counties, if you look at their assistant or their deputy classification, the bachelor's is a requirement as well.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Callen. Public comment?
Al Segal, Taxpayer Association. Good morning. barely. We recommend that you approve this. We've reviewed it, and we've communicated with the auditor. And we particularly like the idea of the auditor being elected by the public, not appointed by the Board of Supervisors who spend money. Makes sense. Works good. Thank you.
Mr. Fry?
As a taxpayer and constituent in the county, I would recommend that you approve what the auditor controller is recommending.
Bill McManus, Calaveras County. This battle's been going on for some time as far as going back to Linda Churches, and we've had discussions about it, where the auditor needs to be viewed as independent from the board because they monitor the board to some degree. At the same time, you're trying to find people that are most qualified for it, and it's not going to be a popularity race. So there seems to be some conflict there of trying to get both things done. When you look at county government now, we have an excellent CAO. He's not elected. He was chosen based on his qualifications. Same with planning director, environmental health. There's lots of department heads that were selected because of their skill sets and not because they were popular in the county. In fact, they may not even be from this county. So if you can strike that balance where the first thing we need is someone who can do the job, whether they're appointed or elected. You've got to have those skill sets there. It's an important job. And then how do you protect that office from interference by the governing board? So I don't know how you quite get that, but one thing could happen. If there's a vacancy in the office, if it's an elected position, you've got to do things a certain way. If the board, if you had a vacancy in the office, the board could elect to appoint someone temporarily. There's no election required. Elections aren't required. It's not a constitutional office. You could even move to hiring an accounting firm that could take over that function and do it for the county until a replacement was hired. And if you do have someone who is qualified and you appoint them, maybe you put some sort of buffer in between them and the Board of Supervisors, whether it be the county administrative officer, or maybe you put some restriction on what it would take to get rid of them. And I hate to say it that way, but if they weren't doing the job, would the board be able to do that with 3 votes, or would it be better for a supermajority of 4 votes? Or would it come on the recommendation of the county administrative officer that goes to the board? So I think the number one job is to get the skill sets. And I don't think you need to worry about it being an elected office because it's not a constitutional office, just like the clerk recorder and the elections official. So if you go for the best, there's a way to get them and there's a way to keep them. If you get to a point where no one's qualified, then you don't want to have an election at that point. You want the board to be able to fill that position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McManus. Ms. Remke.
Vicki Ranke, Angels Camp. I want to encourage you to approve this request. I know as a voter, you do want to know that there's some qualification before somebody can get onto a ballot. And actually the person serving for county auditor, controller, that might be a minimum, but think about it. What if we had nobody that had the other qualifications come forward to put their papers in? At least they had to be a controller and auditor somewhere, so they start at a, so anyway, that, I guess what I'm saying is that doesn't bother me as a voter, but it looks like this is a really important thing to have so that when we vote for our auditor controller, we know that there were some criteria to them being able to run. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? Seeing none. Additional, Ms. Callan? All right. Bring it back to the board. Any board discussion?
I would have a problem with it with the last one with 3 years. I'd like to see that raised to 10 years or 8 years.
Speaking of the microphone, Mr. Secretary. Thank you.
I said I would like to see the last part that's for 3 years. I'd like to see that raised to either 8 or 10 years. and I'd be comfortable with it. Otherwise, I'm not comfortable with it.
Further comments? Supervisor Tofinelli.
That was bullet number
4.
4 that you're talking about, where it
Yes.
says 3 years. You'd like to see it either 8 or 10?
Yeah, because just to be a carpenter, you have to do a 4-year apprenticeship. I mean, and that's just to get in the first stage of being a journeyman. So I just find it to be lacking. And it seems to be arbitrary, just thrown in, like somebody came up with 3 years or something. I just don't see the skill sets being set on anything. In my trade, it took 10 to 15 years to get to the position where I was comfortable at my trade.
Supervisor Clapp, would you consider a 5-year?
8, I dropped from 10 to 8.
I think the one thing I want to say, though, the Office of Auditor Controller is not an easy one. We do not make friends. We are not the people that you're wanting to hear from ever. So, you know, we don't have a lot of friends among departments, I will say that.
Thanksgiving a tough day for you.
Unless you have really thick skin, you're probably not going to make it 8 or 10 years. It's not going to be worth we get personally attacked on a regular basis, Supervisor Clapp. And
I'm used to that.
I can handle it, not everyone can. And so I would caution that you may never find someone who will stay in this position as Auditor Controller or as the position as Deputy Auditor Controller, Assistant Auditor Controller for 8 or 10 years. There's just potentially a limit on how much difficulty they want to deal with.
So of the 4 classifications, what is the most strict, most difficult to attain?
The CPA.
And which one would be the easiest to attain? Would be a number 4, correct?
Would be number 4.
Because number 2 actually is 4 years of accounting work plus some time physically doing it somewhere. So we're talking at least 5 years there. That's why I say 4 at 3 years just seems a little light in my world. Knowing how difficult it is to get to those other 3 levels. That 4th one is not difficult at all, and it may open us up to someone who could create a problem for us in the future, and I just want to be sure that that's understood. That I understand succession planning, but also understand this would be a cheap and easy way to get into it if they wanted to.
I would also agree that time should be more than 3 years. I would look at 5 years. But that's just my personal view right now. Further comments by the board?
I'd be willing to go to 5.
I'll support 5 as well.
Do we need a unanimous?
Well, actually, I think we need
It says in the
to,
narrative that
we probably need a motion with that change.
I would
Is
make
that right, counsel?
The motion can certainly include that change. This is just an introduction to an ordinance. It will be coming back for adoption after it's been published. So it doesn't require a unanimous vote to introduce and waive the reading of an ordinance. It's a simple majority.
Okay, so we
Chair,
can bring this action item to a vote
Chair, I'd
with
like
that change? That's what I'm understanding? That's correct?
Chair, I would like to make a motion with the amendment to bullet point number 4 to make the continuous period not less than 5 years and to accept it as stated.
Been moved by Supervisor Mills,
I'll second.
second by Supervisor Tofinelli. Any further public comment on this issue? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed indicate by saying no.
No.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay, thank you. And I will get the updated language to you, Diane. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is the 12 o'clock hour, a little bit past. Obviously, we're going to be here for the afternoon hour. This time we've taken a break Madam Clerk, back at 1:40, would that work for you? 1:30 would work for you? Gentlemen and staff, 1:30 it will be. We'll reconvene at 1:30.
So did you see this thing? Sorry.